From kindergarten to school, from school to university, and from university to choosing a career. Whilst everything around us seems to change, there's one fundamental aspect of life that does not. Communication. You see, the way we communicate is actually the way we change. And how effective that change becomes is dependent on how effective our communication is. So, how often do we communicate? How many times a day do you speak to loved ones or friends? And how many times a day do you speak to strangers? Now, I'm not talking surface level interaction. You know the type, at the counter at the petrol station or the grocery store. The, hey, how's it going? Isn't the weather lovely today? No, I'm talking real communication. Because as a society, as a whole, we don't communicate enough. But we need to, though, because the evidence suggests that where we stand socially has a direct impact on our self-efficacy and our life satisfaction. Unfortunately for many, though, even the thought of making communication or a new conversation with somebody new, for many, brings out anxiety and trepidation. In fact, 11% of Australians suffer social phobia at some point in their life, and an additional 15 million Americans do as well. Now, I'm all sure you have times when you felt nervous. You know, when your heart might race a little, you could get butterflies in your stomach, maybe your mouth goes a little dry, or you could even muddle up your words. And this could be perhaps, maybe on a first date with someone really special, or perhaps moments before a presentation at a university or a workplace. Or it could even be in that moment before your interview for your dream job. You can all think of something like this, right? Well, so can I. I remember feeling my throat clench up, my stomach turn, and my breathing stop when the person I once called my partner punched a hole in the wall just centimeters from my head. And I remember feeling this shock and fear again, only a few weeks later, when this time he hit me in the face. And then it sunk in that this was in fact not the first time that I'd been physically hurt by somebody who was supposed to love me. In one of my experiences, I lost my entire sense of self. I went from personable and bubbly to isolated and reclusive. I lost my complete identity, and I even went mute for a little while. I was forced to stop talking to my family and my friends, and I wasn't allowed to make connections with anybody new. And I felt completely trapped in this situation with nobody to talk to, nobody to turn to. I lost my ability to communicate and therefore to change. Now, can I ask you a question? Who was actually popular in high school? I wasn't. I was the fat, unpopular kid that was socially awkward. I used to sometimes skip school and other events just because I felt that uncomfortable. In fact, when the guys played games at school, I was their punishment if they had lost. They'd say things like, "You have to go over there and stand by Taryn now." Ew. And when I walked by in the schoolyard, they'd pick up rubbish bins and they'd tip them out in front of me. And they'd tease and they'd laugh at me because they knew that I would pick it all up, just because I loved the environment so much. I was teased relentlessly. And at this time, I had one friend. And even though I tried to make other friends, everybody seemed really elusive or just tried to ditch me. The worst part about this as well was when I wanted to have somebody to talk to and turn to for support, my mum, she wasn't even available to listen. But the funny thing about all of this is, once I lost all my weight, all of a sudden everybody wanted to be my friend. So, can you imagine experiencing years of school bullying, vilification, and isolation, multiple domestic abuse and sexual abuse incidences, accompanied by developing a severe eating disorder, and depression and suicidal thoughts, and getting trapped in an emotionally abusive relationship? No wonder I lost sense of myself, and I lost my voice, and I lost my ability to communicate and connect with others. But the key is, how did I use my experiences and pick myself up like this little orange and move from fear and into freedom? Well, this is something I'd really like to share with you today, so you can implement this as well. As I know I'm not the only one who's gone through adverse circumstances, and I would like to acknowledge that we don't have to be a victim of our circumstances. So the first step is adaptation. Now, here's an example of what adaptation is not. Taryn Elizabeth, can you please clean up the dinner table so we can sit down and have dinner now? Okay, Mum, I'm doing it now. Now, this isn't an example of adaptation. This is avoidance. So there's a big difference here. Now, adaptation is more like picturing yourself as a chameleon, being able to change and your colours in accordance to your environment for your advantage. Now, when I was teased and bullied as a kid, I had to adapt. When my parents split and my brother wasn't around, I had to adapt. And when I was socially absent and isolated, I had to adapt. For me, it was either do this or accept a nightmare reality, which unfortunately I had done for too long. So, who else in the room is a perfectionist? Anybody? I know I am. And how many people have put things off in their lives because they don't feel ready to show the world who they really are? Yes, lots of us, right? Well, we are constantly faced with these challenges to be able to step up and fill these unrealistic expectations just so we can fit in and be accepted socially. However, we often overthink how we come across socially. However, but it's been shown that there are socio-affective variables such as stress and self-esteem that actually have a higher impact on our ability to socially adapt than any cognitive factors do. Now, there's a few ways that we can do this. Some of the social techniques we have is mimicry and mirroring the behavior of the person that we're talking to. We've found that these pro-social behaviors can increase helpfulness and generosity. And even the mere act of smiling can evoke the release of neurotransmitters such as oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. And we know that oxytocin can in fact enhance social motivation and bonding, which can increase our social status and enhance our life satisfaction and self-esteem. Smiling also encourages the reward activation of the brain and the other person as well. So just by implementing these few physical attributes, we can then get started on the right foot socially. And I'm sure you've heard of others, such as asking the other person questions about their lives and allowing them to talk about their interests. And something as simple yet extremely effective is remembering their name. as Dale Carnegie has taught us. Now, even though all these techniques are fantastic, there's one particular tactic that has worked wonders for me in moving from fear and into freedom. And this is by using social characters. So what is a social character? A social character is something or someone that we can embody in those times that we feel that we cannot tackle certain situations immediately as ourselves. And you'll find that you've developed different social characters for different parts and times in your life. Now, it's similar to a video game. You need to train, evolve, and level up your character as you gain experience and you progress further throughout the game. However, simply now we're applying it to your life. Now, when picking a social character, it needs to be done very specifically. You need to identify the most desirable traits that you want and be able to embody these. So for me, I needed confidence and self-esteem. So I developed a character that embodied this. And then my needs shifted to being bold and being brave. So I found a character that fit this repertoire as well. So if you take a moment today, can I ask you, what traits would you like to embody? And who do you know has these traits? It could be a real life person, like a celebrity, a sports person, or somebody that you admire, or it could be your favorite character in a video game. Just somebody that when you think of them, you know that this is the state that I need to embody right now. And once we've identified these characters, we can consciously take on their persona in times when we feel like we don't have the needs to do in that particular moment. Now, a fantastic question that I've found to be able to get into this mode is to ask yourself, what would your character do? I've often to ask myself this question using a variety of different characters in different circumstances, which can help you move from anxiousness and nervousness, or perhaps when you're immobilized by fear. And it gives us the opportunity to move from a self-doubting mentality that thinks, I'm not ready, I can't do this, and into a self-assuring mentality that says, okay, how can I deal with this? And what's the next step? Now, one of my social characters was Senua from a video game that I used to play. In times when I felt like I needed to be brave, but I couldn't, I would channel Senua and I'd allow her to take over me. I'd ask myself, what would Senua do in this moment? It allowed me to bring myself out of that and see it from a different perspective, to change the narrative for ourselves. And once I acknowledged what she would be doing, I could do exactly that. So as you see, once we start harnessing these social characters, they can grow with you, and their traits can start to embody and become ingrained within you. They start to become who you are. And we can now tackle those circumstances which we did not feel well equipped to do earlier. And by using these techniques and using these traits, you'll now be able to evolve from fear and into freedom. Thank you.